One example we should all live and learn and live by. Mr. Sam Dehne.
Sam Dehne, who continues to be the encyclopedia of Reno government, and what a wonderful message, sad message, wonderful message that young man has the courage to come up here and say his piece each week. You can't forget that. By the way, I like this idea of the 12 o'clock meeting time. That's good, and I don't want you to change it just because I like it. I can see you thinking already about that.
Mister, bring that up after a while.
Just about every year, Sam puts his name on a voting ballot in the community or in the state, just so he can prove once again how queer our corrupt voting system is. And he proved it once again last night. And if the media had an ounce, just an ounce of gumption or honesty, the freaky media, they would be reporting the freakiness of Sam Dehne's vote. And I'm not here to whine. I didn't even really want to go to Washington. But let me tell you right now, those vote-stealing cheaters had those vote machines synchronized and calibrated to such perfection that in every single one of 16 counties that Sam was on the ballot in, every single county, Sam got exactly 10% of the vote. What are the chances of that happening, Eddie? What do you think? What are the chances of that happening? 10% of the vote in each county. You don't have to be a mathematician to see how crooked that is. It kind of reminds me of a parable that the priest told me the other day. These two guys were sitting and having a cup of coffee, and the one guy says, "Hey, Pete, I'm going to go back to school." And Pete says, "Good." So he goes and sees the professor. The professor says, "We have to take some English, some math, and some history. Oh, and some logic." And Pete says, "Well, what's logic?" And the professor says, "I'll give you an example. Do you have a weed eater?" And he says, "Yeah, I have a weed eater." "Well, by logic, if you have a weed eater, I guess that you have a yard." "Yes, I do have a yard. A weed eater and a yard." And then he says, "Well, if you have a yard, by logic, I can figure you've got a house." He says, "Yes, I have a house. By the same logic, I can figure that you've got a family and you're heterosexual." He says, "Absolutely right. I'm going to take this course." So he goes back to the coffee. He sees Pete and he says, Pete says, "What happened?" "I'm taking a course in history, math, English, and logic." And Pete says, "Well, what's logic?" He says, "Well, I'll give you an example. Do you have a weed eater?" And Pete says, "No." He says, "Well, you're queer." Yeah, queer like the media, queer like the corrupt voting system, that kind of queer, the old kind of queer, corrupt, mendacious, perverted, deceptive, rotten, evil, wicked. And I'm hoping I'm making sense. I'm just up there flaming. I've been doing this for 16 years, and you guys are saying, "There goes that Sam Dehne again." Once again, there's Brandy saying, "That Sam's really losing it this time." When I say the word queer, I mean the queer media, and I mean the queer vote-stealing system that anybody with an ounce of sense can see. There it is, right there. Exactly. Oh, the calibration didn't work perfectly because the vote stealers, they went back and forth trying to figure out who to give my stolen votes to. My opponents went up and down and back and forth with all of my stolen votes, and they just barely figured out how to give it to them. Right, the truth this once.
Thank you very much.